You're listening to the REITE Club podcast, where the focus is all about helping you grow your real estate investment portfolio and live the life you want to live. Come grow with us and join our community at thereiteclub.com. And now your hosts, Sarah Larby and Alfonso Salemi.
Okay, cool. And I will add, like, every municipality, and one of the things that I've learned over the years, have different requirements, and it's just so different, even from like one town and you go to the next, like literally the next town over, the next city over, and it's just a different set of requirements. So walk us through, as an investor, maybe somebody that wants to get into conversions, because that sometimes makes the most sense, right? Depending on where you are and what property you're doing. So what are some things that they should be aware of before they go ahead and buy that piece of property? So let's just say they're going out to view a property. Walk us through some of that.
Oh, well, I'm glad you asked, right? Because this is some of the things that actually I basically consult clients every day on these very same items. I mean, from a punch list or a bullet point standpoint, I'll say the first thing you want to look at is obviously the zoning, because not all municipalities will allow for the conversion or the BRRRR with conversions, I guess you can call it that, right? BRRRR with conversion or in some areas. Right, so you have to first determine, okay, is the zoning actually, does the zoning allow for that type of conversion? The second major, really important piece is parking. Some municipalities will allow for parking to be in tandem, right? Meaning one behind the other. Others, they'll actually require that you have the parking in bay parking format, meaning they're 90 degree one beside each other. Right, so that's really important. Now, there's also a nuance there when you look at, in some municipalities, they have different, if you want to say, definitions for these things, right? So Laurel, you earlier mentioned like a granny flat or something like that, right? So there's like granny flats, there's garden suites, there's secondary suites, there's accessory units, there's duplex, like all these different things.
Coach
you really got to have a
now
grasp
as
of
well,
this.
and tiny homes.
And tiny homes, right?
And
Laneway houses and all these other things. They're trying to create affordable housing for anyone, right? So this is something that you also need to become familiar with. What is actually allowed in the various zones, and how does parking relate, coordinate or collaborate with that? Another really important thing that you need to look for is, and you won't necessarily find this in the zoning, right? So this is more on a conservation side. You really need to look and see whether or not the property or the plot of land is located near a high floodplain, right? So if your property or plot of land is located near a high floodplain, what happens is that you more than likely will not be able to place a secondary unit on that property without the permission from the conservation authorities, right? And these floodplain like mapping people, right? They basically will determine whether or not the risk is too high or too low. But as a general rule of thumb, if your property is located within a floodplain, like, you just stay away from it, because it will just add an extra couple months. Who knows? Maybe you never get to convert it, right?
Yeah, and as I recall from some of my studies, is that it's like 100-year floodplain, right? Like, so people will say, well, there hasn't been a flood here in 20 or 30 years.
That's right.
Too bad. So sad. 100 years ago, there was a flood, and if there was one then, there's nothing to say that there can't be one tomorrow.
Well,
right?
Laurel, that's a really interesting point you bring up. So, I mean, does this kind of tap in back into some of my past experiences? So, the 100-year floodplain, that's really the 100-year flood that they're talking about. When cities are designing their infrastructure, like for drainage, water runoff and stuff, that's what they look at. They look at the last 100 years and look at forward, what do the 100 year from now a flood look like, right? And they try to design for that. Now, if you purchase a property that is within a floodplain, sometimes it doesn't mean that area floods. It just means that area has a higher risk of flooding if we experience that 100-year flood that they designed the infrastructure based on, right? So that's really interesting and something that you need to make note of when you're looking at these secondary units.
Yeah, and before you go on to the next thing, where can somebody go to find if their property that they're looking at is in a flood zone?
Oh man, you're asking me. This is what I get paid for. Okay, okay, fine.
You
Only for the
gotta
right
give
club.
some
Only for
goods
the
here.
right
Come
club.
on.
Okay, okay. So really, honestly, Google is your friend, right? That's probably one of the things like I really excel at. Like I'm a research fanatic. If I need to find something, I'll find it. You know, like there's nothing that can be hidden. In fact, I actually, when I used to work in my 9 to 5, I actually researched so deeply into a company that I found such information that during the interview, the guy was like, "How do you know this stuff? You know, like how there's no way you could know this." I was like, "Yeah, I got insiders." But really, Google is my insider. And if you search long and hard enough, you'll find all the information you need. So what I typically do is really simple. It's just floodplain in Welland, floodplain in Cambridge, floodplain. And they have a lot of interactive maps now. Sometimes they're a little bit tricky to use, but honestly, you can give me an address and within 5 minutes, I can get you all the information you need to know if you need to buy that property or not, right? So all the information is really online. You just need somewhat of an expert lens to kind of just view the information, right?
I think that would be, it just occurred to me that that would be really kind of cool. Just you could look up your own address and see where you are. Like forget about the conversion, just see your own address where you
Yeah.
live.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, then and all of a sudden I'm thinking, okay, that has implications for insurance and all kinds of things. So maybe if you're not in a floodplain, you can go back to your insurance and say, hey, you know, I noticed that, you know, there's this little rider about floods and I'm not in the floodplain, so what's going on? And let's
Exactly.
negotiate. I mean, everything's negotiable, right? But if you have the information and you've got the facts behind you, then hey, who knows what can happen?
Wow. I never actually thought of it in that way, but
All
yeah,
right, I want
maybe you can save some insurance money.
I want my commission.
You want the commission? That's a good point.
Yeah, and you know what? You're likely not going to be able to finish the basement and finish it nicely. Like I know a lot of my properties in Brantford are in Eagle Place, and there's lots. And Ronald, you probably know this, but there's like flood zones in the majority of that area. So
That's right.
they're great for burring singles. They're not great for burring, you know, into conversions.
Oh yeah, like you know, that is so risky. A lot of people don't even know how risky floodplains are, but I guarantee you, you do not want to purchase a property in a flood zone because even if you are allowed to put a basement apartment in there or secondary suite, whatever you choose to call it, you would have to do, if they allow you, it will come with a lot of recommendations, which would probably be waterproofing the entire thing and making this, you know, which would probably bump your renovation budget from 120 to maybe 100 to 80, 90, right? Like who knows?
If
So,
even and it might not even be allowed regardless. So just to go back though, like if it isn't a floodplain and you can burr a property without converting it, that could still work. But just
that's
keep
right.
in mind, and you can't likely duplex it, right? Or add
That's
a secondary
correct.
suite.
So now
okay,
you have a second exit. That's right.
Exactly. So after you do the flood zone and the checking and everything like that, what's the next thing that you would recommend somebody do?
Well, the next thing is that they sign up with me, right? Well, no, but okay.
But you know what? In all, and
yes.
I know we're just joking, but I'll tell you as
yeah.
an investor, I don't want to work in that part of my business. I would rather delegate it out to somebody that knows the city, knows the rules, can do it a lot more efficiently than I could. And to be honest, like some of the cities are so slow and horrible to deal with. I would rather just hire somebody to take care of that piece and, you know, work on the overall business. So 100%, if somebody is doing conversion, and it's your first conversion or your second conversion, or you're still, you know, just hire the experts that have done hundreds of them so that they can help guide you, do it for you, do the drawings, get the drawings approved, and walk you through each step, because you're helping them throughout the whole process of the conversion as well. But keep going. I know you were just joking, but it is really important to hire the experts for this kind of stuff.
No, that's great advice.
I want to add something in there. Like in the summer, we actually were considering converting a basement to a secondary suite, and we were just considering, like at the very beginning of the process, and we brought somebody in who actually has something, you know, has a lot of experience, and out of that conversation came as like, oh, I don't think so. Just because there were things we didn't even thought of, right? Well, okay, parking's an issue, so you're going to have an exit out here, and that means, oh, guess what? The gas fireplace has to be totally rerouted, and the fireplace is going to come, or the parking lot's going to come out exactly where the patio is, and all of a sudden you're into not just thousands of dollars, but tens of thousands of dollars to make it work.
Thanks for listening to the REITE Club podcast and joining our community of real estate investors online at thereiteclub.com, where the focus is about helping you grow. We look forward to seeing you again next week. Thanks from your hosts, Sarah Larby and Alfonso Salemi.